Greetings and aloha. I'm Bodhi B, coming to you from the slopes of Haleakala Crater here on Maui, Hawaii. And this is Death Tracks. Join us as we follow tracks, make tracks, and listen to musical tracks as we wander and wonder in the fields of conscious living and dying, and we contemplate the endings of what is dying in the world. Thank you for joining us. This is an interview I did 3 years ago when my guest was diagnosed with a brain tumor and was told that he had about 3 months to live. And this is 3 years later, and he's still very much alive. I'm here in the studio right here in Maui, Hawaii. Bodhi B. This is Death Tracks. Delighted to have my in-studio guest today. I'm going to read to you what I wrote about him in promoting this interview. My guest today will be Stephen Armstrong, a longtime senior teacher and retreat guide at the Insight Meditation Society in Massachusetts. Stephen was one of the first Westerners to travel to Burma to study Theravada Buddhism. A monk in Burma for 5 years, he has now been practicing mindfulness meditation within the Insight tradition daily for 40 plus years. Stephen has immersed himself in intensive silent practice of insight and loving kindness meditations and the study of Buddhist psychology. He's been leading meditation retreats internationally since 1990. Stephen has recently been diagnosed with a rare brain tumor, glioblastoma multiforme. Though he has canceled teaching for the remainder of the year, through his generosity, this is a rare opportunity, in my view, to interview someone living with a terminal disease who has given much of his life to exploring the terrain of his heart and mind, and who has utilized his practice towards maintaining a balanced attitude of mind and sense of well-being. So thank you, Stephen, for coming on the show today.
Hey, thanks for the invitation.
And I do think it is a precious opportunity to speak with someone, because I've had people on the show who are meditators, and I've had people on the show who are dealing with a serious illness, but I've never had the two as one person. And so this is fascinating to me because of what so much happens when the reality of the possibility of your impending death becomes real to you. And of course, sometimes I like to say, there's really no difference between you and me, because we're both going to die and we don't know when. But there's also a difference in that it's become maybe more real to you than it is to me. Although working in this field and being enmeshed in the field, it's become very real to me. But I'm sure in some ways it's more real to you, even though nothing's changed and everything's changed.
That's a good way of putting it. We all know from a young age that something happens at the end of life. But it never seems to happen to us until, for me, was to, get a diagnosis of the current tumor I have. And then it became like, it was much more personal, really quick. It didn't take long to realize that something significantly had shifted in my understanding of me, my life, who I am, what's going on, how it's going to be. Everything changes. And yet, day to day, pretty same, in a funny way.
Well, let's go back a little ways, because I'd like you to just educate us all a little bit. At some point in your, let's say 40 plus years ago, when you were maybe in your young 20s, you said something turned you towards the East, or turned you towards looking for something different. Say a little bit about how that all came about.
I got through university by momentum of my parents, and after that kind of It was in the late 60s, early 70s. And I knew what I didn't want to do with my life, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. I tried traveling and tried law school and ended up in a hippie commune in central Maine. And from there, got introduced to, or with some of those folks, got into one of the first meditation retreats in the Vipassana or mindfulness insight retreats that was offered. And that coalesced something in my inner mind terrain that kept me there. Meaning, when I first heard the teachings of awareness and some of the Buddhist understanding of the truth or the way things are, it was as if I resonated with it in a way that seemed to it seemed to express what I'd always thought and felt and believed and known about myself anyway, but I'd never heard it, I'd never read it, had never spoke to anyone about it, but it perfectly reflected an understanding that I already had within me. And so it was very easy to have a lot of confidence in the teachers, the teaching, and the practice, which was mindfulness.
Give us a short description of what that practice entails.
Well, on an intensive retreat, which I went to, and this is back when meditation was really woo-woo, wow-wow. It was really out there. There wasn't even the word mindfulness wasn't well understood, not known. And before I went to my first retreat, I didn't know anybody who meditated. I didn't know anything about Buddhism. I wasn't particularly interested in a spiritual practice. Like all youth at the time, I was experimenting with everything and anything that was available, and was mostly interested in the Grateful Dead, appropriately. So when I heard the first teachings and resonated so closely with them, it hooked me in a way that I couldn't ignore. That's not to say that it was easy. Trying to follow the instructions of how to be mindfully aware of the breath as you sit still in a posture that you're not familiar with for 45 minutes or an hour was not comfortable.
So simple and so difficult.
Yeah, it's easy to understand, but it's very difficult to do. And it was a 2-week retreat, and I hadn't had 1 minute of meditation practice before I started.
Wow, you jumped in, didn't you?
I jumped in, yeah, both weeks. And it was agony. It was torturous. Physically. I was just, for both the body and the mind, both. It was pretty tumultuous. But something got activated that at the end of 2 retreats, or at the end of the 2-week retreat, the world looked very, very different than when I went in. Yeah.
And then at some point you thought, I'm going to go to the kind of the beginnings or the source of these teachings.
Well, after that initial introduction to the meditation, I was back in the commune, going about my usual distracted life, and but gradually I started doing more retreats. Recently, just after that first retreat, the center, which has become Insight Meditation Society in Massachusetts, was bought, and I went on staff there early on when it was just opened, and was there in different capacities over the course of 5 or 6 years. Doing a lot of retreats with a lot of different teachers, but all in this mindfulness Vipassana insight tradition.
At some point, you did a 3-month retreat.
I did, but it took me I started in 75, and I did my first long retreat, 3-month retreat was in 84, 9 years later.
Mm-hmm.
So I had done 10-day retreats, one retreat, a 1-week retreat, and stuff like that in the meantime. But a long retreat for 3 months was 8. I'd been practicing for about 8 or 9 years.
So explain to us, what do you do when you do insight Vipassana practice? You sit there and then what?
Well, the task that we assign, or that we are assigned, is pay attention, meaning observe your experience, know what you're experiencing. And we start simple with something like the breath. We're all besieged by, aches and pains in the body and thoughts in the mind and worries and anxiety and frustration and disappointment and all kinds of stuff going on in our mind. But the direction is just put that on the burner, on the back burner, and see if you can just feel your breathing in the body, and maybe in the belly, maybe in the chest, maybe at the nostrils. But just see if you can steady your attention enough on an experience that's tangible, really tangible. You're not mistaking, the breath for something else. That's what it is. And so when we try to do that, we find out that it's easy to understand and very, very difficult to do. Mm-hmm. And then we start to learn how to recognize that you're not paying attention.
When you wandered off somewhere.
You've wandered off. You've forgotten to pay attention. You forgot what you're doing. You're spaced out. You're lost in the future. You're lost in the past. Right. So when you notice that, we learn to just put that aside. We're not throwing it away. We're not getting it away. We're just saying, not now.
Come back later.
Yeah, come back. And then reconnect with the present moment experience. Initially, it's of a very tangible object like the breath or some other physical sensations in the body. Yeah. And so that's how you...
Can you do that while you're talking to me?
I am monitoring, what the body's feeling, what the mind is thinking but not yet saying, a lot of things going on. But that's because I can notice things as they go by in the body, in the mind, and allot them their time and space when necessary. But I don't need to be overwhelmed by them.
I had to teach myself to sit 2 minutes, starting with 2 minutes.
That's where we all start.
I had to see if I could keep my body still for 2 minutes, just my body still for 2 minutes. And then I went to see if I could sit still for 5 minutes. And then I continued to add on to where I could sit still for, an hour, let's say.
Yeah.
And, of course, then the real work is to quiet the mind and to find the way into that, what you've just described, what was underneath all that busy thinking, to that big pool of spacious awareness. That took quite a while. That's the practice. So, do you get up every morning and sit and practice? More or less. Like I say, I have a daily practice, but I don't do it every day.
Yeah, I think at this point, for me and probably for you, because you've been at it for a long time, it's like awareness is there's a baseline default setting of awareness in our life that doesn't go away. It's not as continuous as it can be if we're doing intensive practice, and it's not totally distracted when we get really caught up in something. But, there's an ongoing mindful awareness, even without making an intention, postural, sitting, formal.
Would you say you spend much of the day in the awareness of your breath?
Not of the breath. Not just of the breath, but awareness, yes. And that will include both awareness of the body, whether it's the posture, or the moving, or the micro sensations in the body, and what's going on in the mind, including what the eyes are seeing, when the ears are hearing, when the thoughts are thinking, and also what we're thinking about, or our relationship to experience, so that when something unpleasant happens, we know, this is unpleasant, and we know that, or we see the reaction in the mind of I don't like it, I'm impatient, I get upset about this. So it really is noticing the whole range of mental physical activity. Rarely do I actually now go and spend extended time with a chosen object like the breath. That would I would only do that if I was really scattered, or just really unfocused, or in a very chaotic state of mind, or just feeling like things are overwhelming in some way. Then I might steady the mind on one thing for a while just to settle, calm, and then open up to the fullness of what's going on. But initially, wake up in the day, and mostly I just try to register that, I'm awake. This is before I start moving in the bed. I'm awake. And notice that, I have a choice of whether to open my eyes or not, and whether to move or not, and begins there. That's awareness. That is mindfully knowing and recognizing the present moment's experience.
Sometimes there's, like, we talk about two different kinds of awareness. And what I heard you say, I think, was the awareness that we have of what we're experiencing moment to moment. Yeah. And then there's awareness itself, separate from the individuated experience. And my understanding of Tantra, for example, is that the awareness is happening in the experience and not separate from the experience. So then sometimes that what you described sounds like you've maybe it's not true. Maybe it's just the way I heard it, that your awareness is causing you to step back in terms of witnessing what you're experiencing. You know what I'm saying?
I hear the question, but I don't distinguish the difference. Let me just say that I don't separate two kinds of awareness, so I'm having a little trouble understanding that.
I'm having an awareness of where my body is touching the chair now.
Yeah.
And then I sometimes have an experience of that which is pure awareness.
Yes. Okay. That I would call being aware of the mind, being aware of awareness. Sometimes there's awareness of the body, how your body feels. Sometimes there's awareness of the mental activity, the cognitive, acknowledgement of what you're experiencing and what you think about it, or you have your affective relationship to it. I like it, I don't like it, I'm frustrated, I'm disappointed, whatever. And then there is this recognition of, an awareness of all this is happening. And you recognize that awareness. I would call that being aware of the awareness itself.
And do you ever just fall into the awareness, so there is no you being aware of the awareness?
I think it happens all the time, where there's no close identification with, I am doing this awareness. But awareness is happening.
Awareness is happening.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Awareness is happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ram Dass says, I am loving awareness. And I said to him, maybe the next step is loving awareness is, rather than I am loving awareness.
Yeah.
That we forget about this sense of individuated self.
Yeah. In when we first start practice, it's all about me learning how to meditate. And if you really do learn how to meditate, then you realize it's not you who's meditating. There are these qualities of the mind, and some habits of mind that are kind of operating and producing awareness. So we can really step back from being the agent of making awareness happens, which is a false
I like that
idea.
Well, what's your understanding of what the mind actually is, or where is it?
I don't posit the mind anywhere in particular, except it seems to be close to the body, associated to the body in some way.
I've gotten into practicing the considering the possibility that thoughts that are going through my mind aren't necessarily my thoughts.
I will reassure you that they are not your thoughts. We get this,
really?
Yeah, in this sense that when we lead a retreat, people, within a couple of days, they start to recognize how much they're thinking, how much they're lost in thought. And often we get asked the question, where are these thoughts coming from? And the true answer...
The guy next to you.
Yeah, we always say the person next to you. Think of them as the person next to you. Because if they were their thoughts, you wouldn't care. So what? They can think whatever they want. You might be enticed by it. You might be ashamed of it. You might be scared by it. But nevertheless, it's not yours. So when we start to consider all these thoughts that go through our mind as arising due to causes and conditions mostly that are out of our control. We don't choose to have our thoughts. They come upon us, don't they? I mean, if we had to choose every thought that we have, we wouldn't think so much. But we do. We think a lot. And so they come out of conditions that we're not aware of. And yet, somehow we own them, or we claim them. We make them our own. We think, this is my thought. I got to do something with this. I either got to judge myself as being good for having this thought, or I got to judge myself bad for having this kind of thought, or, I got to follow this thought and make it happen, or whatever. And this leads to just a tremendous amount of complication in life when we're not able to see our thoughts and make some wise decisions how to relate to them.
So now, after 40 years of practicing and teaching, how would you say that's changed you?
I can't imagine having lived the last 40 years without awareness, some degree of awareness. I can't imagine where my life would be, or where I'd be heading, or what I'd be doing. It seems the only good thing to do with your life is to pay attention, and pay attention to this is it. This is not a rehearsal for anything. This is your life, and it's passing one moment at a time. You're either here for it, or you're not. And for me, that's my interest. I want to be here for the full duration. I got this intimation when I was leaving college, getting out of college, and I knew what I didn't want to do, but I knew I wanted to understand the mind. I wanted to explore the mind. Of course, at that time it was drugs and psychedelics and things like that, but it was soon got into the meditation and beyond that. So, in my condition now, my aspiration is not different. I want to understand what's happening now in this moment of life, because that's all I'm ever going to have is a moment of life, a moment of life, a moment of life, a moment of life, end of life. I want to be there for that whole process. And then I'll know. When people want to know what happens at death, I'll have as best as I can get from direct experience. So that's my aspiration, really.
So the Buddhists talk about ground.
For me, what's important is the direct experience of the present moment. And that is both the body, the mind, the activity of the mind, thinking, planning, whatever, the affective, emotional tone of the mind. All of that is like direct experience, gazillion ways of understanding what happens in life. All the psychotherapeutic traditions and the religious traditions and shamanic traditions, and they all have ways of understanding what happens. And like on TV, if you watch
threw it away 25 years ago.
Not quite.
I did. I threw my TV away 25 years ago.
That's a good thing to do. I would agree with that. But the thing is, all the TV that went in the first 30 or 40 years is still in there.
Oh yeah, I know. I hear you.
And it is deeply conditioning how you see the world. Mm-hmm. What you see, how you see, how you understand what's going on in your life. And while there are plenty of options in your field, how to die and what to do when you die and what to do after you die and all that, there's many ways of understanding it, and you've got all kinds of guides and people that are willing to tell you what's going to happen and whatnot. But if you're not there for it, you're never going to know for yourself. That's what I'm interested in.
Beautiful. So let's go right to. I'm guessing that after 40 years, that the waves of challenges and obstacles that all of us encounter in life. I'm going to guess that your practice and your awareness of the present moment helps you to ride those.
Oh, sure. Yeah, being able to both be aware of the present moment, and this is an important piece here, is accept it. So to be aware of something doesn't necessarily imply that you accept this is the way it is for me for now. You could have a lot of resistance to it, and then you're not seeing it clearly because you've got some aversion to it.
Right.
And so it's not only just seeing what's going on, it's understanding this is the way it is. This is the way it is for me for now. And that acceptance is the area of challenge.
No doubt. And in fact, I often feel that acceptance isn't quite the whole thing, that we actually need to actually love it. Accepting it is maybe, for me, not quite there. I want to be able to love it all the way, and I'm not saying that's an easy thing. But let's go to now. One day something happens to you that's going to change your life, or has changed your life. And why don't you describe to us how that came about and what happened and what your mind did with all that?
Up until the incident, which I'll describe, I was a 69-year-old guy looking to work for another 10 years teaching, and just gradually slowing down, retiring, and just spending more time at the sanctuary.
Come on, Buddhists don't retire.
Well, Buddhist teachers don't retire. I can see that. But I was interestingly, I was putting up some prayer flags on the land, and for about 30 seconds, I was trying to say something to him. Let's tie this one this way, or let's put this one first, or something. And I said something, but it didn't come out sounding like what I was thinking. So I said, whoa, let me try that again. So I tried again to say what I wanted to say, and it came out just gobbledygook to him again. And I recognized something's not quite right here.
Your mind was still working internally.
Oh yeah. My mind knew what it wanted to say. It knew the words. It knew but it couldn't say them. And I tried a third time, and it was still didn't work. So I said, what the hell with it? We'll just go on, and we did the job. And within a couple of...
At that point, did you think something wasn't quite right?
I had some sense of something. It's like, this is peculiar, but let's get the job done. That's where my mind was.
That's a guy thing.
Yeah, that's a guy thing. And then...
carry on.
Within a couple of minutes, my voice was back, and I could talk, and I was normal again. So it's like, oh, that's over. But an hour or so later, I was talking to someone else, and I had another trip up and not quite being able to speak what I was thinking. So I mentioned it to Kamala and some friends, and I said, I had this funny experience. Either Kamala or one of my friends said, maybe you want to check this out with somebody. So I called another friend who is a retired doctor, and told him what was going on. And he said, take an aspirin, and go to the emergency room as quick as you can. So we had some sense that, something's going on in the brain, whether it's a stroke or something. And so went to the emergency room here. And
still, how's the mind?
I was normal. To me, my internal life was normal. There was no pain.
Oh, we're just going to the emergency room today.
Well, I knew something was going on. It was going to get checked out, but I didn't physically feel or mentally feel threatened.
No threat, no sense of fear, no projection on what does the future mean, or
no, not yet. No. And got there and they did a CAT scan, I think, first, and they said, there's something going on in the brain. We're going to admit you for more observation for 48 hours. And the next morning, an MRI revealed what was, by all experiences, or what expectations was, that it was a tumor. And through some more tests and whatnot, it was determined that I should probably have surgery as soon as possible. Within a couple of days, I did. And
because they couldn't tell what kind of tumor until they took it out, is that right?
Yeah. They couldn't be sure that it wasn't just an infection. It could have been an infection and not a tumor. So they knew it wasn't a stroke, though, or a TID, a TDI, or something like that. So
wait, now you've been told you're going to need to go come back to the hospital and have your head cut open and have a tumor removed. How's the mind?
It just, it seemed like, well, okay, all right. I really wasn't thinking about
really was
the
it like going out for
consequences.
pizza or what?
Well, not quite going out for pizza. It's just like, oh, my life is going to change. That's kind of
just like that, pretty even keeled. My life's going to change now.
As I recall, I don't remember getting to. They let me out of the hospital after 48 hours and said, go to the surgeon in Honolulu. I did. I went to him and he said, I can do you in 2 days, 3 days, whatever it was.
Just another day for those guys.
Yeah, and so getting through the gymnastics of a surgeon and the whole insurance thing. Who's going to pay for what? Everybody wants to know who's going to pay for what. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't clear in my case because, anyway, a number of complications. But nevertheless, got that worked out and went into the office for the surgery. And I was in for 48 hours, 60 hours maybe, I don't know, 2.5 days, I think. And walked out and felt normal. I know that sounds weird, but I didn't have any unfamiliar sensations in the head or the body. I was weak because I'd been in the hospital for a while. But then gradually I started to connect I wasn't fully connected with myself after the surgery. And it took a while for me to get back in touch with the body and the mind and what's going on. And
so this whole time you've basically been in the, wow, this is interesting kind of mind state?
Yeah. And Kamala tells me that when I came out of the surgery and I was in the room and hadn't yet come conscious, as soon as I woke up and kind of became aware of my surroundings and who was there, I started saying, I recognize what's going on. I know what's going on. I'm here. I'm present. As if that was most important to me. I know what's going on. I'm here. I know. Being aware.
Were you reassuring people or yourself?
I don't remember feeling. I knew I wanted to be aware of as much as ever I could be aware of, even when I went into the surgery.
I will say that Kamala is sitting here, your teaching partner, and Brian, who I believe is one of your nurses. Is that right?
Yeah, nurse assistant, friend.
Include them. They're sitting here with us too.
Yeah.
But yeah, so carry on. This is fascinating.
Well, for me, the it's all about life, really. And I didn't really. I got to say, even from the first diagnosis, I didn't get it. I mean, I didn't really understand the severity of what I was facing.
Denial, or
didn't have the information, And then the first couple of times that I saw the statistics of those who are diagnosed with glioma, like mine, I saw the statistics. I was like, "Ooh!" I saw it. I understood it, but I didn't really take it in. I didn't make it mine. But after about the third...
No resistance or contraction around it, but not willing to
also
take
didn't
it
open
on as your story.
No, didn't open it. And then the first doctor I talked to about it was here on Maui, and he says, "Do you want this? You want the stats? You want to know what's going on?" And I said, "Yeah." So then he told me. Then I really got it.
What? Don't be pointing at your chest. That doesn't translate on radio very well. Take your time.
I stopped the doctor and I said, wow. So that's the first time I really took it in. I think it became real. Death became real and it became mine. And I didn't know what that meant. But I was interested mostly in, what is this feeling? What is this feeling that makes me cry? I didn't have a mental context or a content other than there's this word, death or dying, that I've heard of and I have some idea about, but I don't really know anything about. And yet when I hear that and it's me, it makes tears in my eyes. What is that feeling? It's not sadness yet. It's not grief. It's not, I don't know what it was. It wasn't fear. It was like, what is this? And that's where my mind went pretty quickly. It was like, wow. Instantly, the heart goes someplace else. The mind goes from, this is my life and it's like this, to some place inside, further from words.
Did that questioning cut off the feeling or shut down the feeling?
The feeling didn't last long. Anyway, it was like a recognition of, this is a feeling. What's this feeling? I don't think it shut it off so much as was interested to more fully grok it, or to kind of take it in, actually. So,
how did that change things for you?
Well, I realized, I think that's where I first started to realize that, first of all, I recognized that I had a lot of assumptions about death and a lot of ideas about death that was now becoming coming into view. And I realized...
Like what?
All dying is going to be painful. All dying is, I'm going to die when I'm 80 plus. Mm-hmm. There's all kinds of little assumptions and beliefs and hopes or something. They're buried just beneath the surface. Mm-hmm. Well, suddenly they all started popping up like mushrooms, and it's like, and you have to deal with them. You have to see, or I wanted to see every thought, every belief, every assumption, every imagination, every hope that I have around death, dying, living, how I want to die, what I don't want to experience when I die. All this stuff came into view.
Because it became a little more real to you that you might be dying?
Yeah. No, I took in the fact, I'm going to die. I took that in, and, still, it's contingent on many, many conditions that I don't have control over. So, I'm just along for the ride in one sense. It's like Mother Nature or the laws of nature are going to take care of this body. I'll do what I can to support it. I'm not God.
I said to Stephen before we started the interview on the radio that my understanding is that Stephen and I are in exactly the same position, in that we both are going to die and we don't know when, but we're also in a very different position, because even though I'm fairly immersed in this world of death and dying and consciousness, that I'm sure it's more real to Stephen, because he had or is having what I would call a close encounter. That it's like I tell people, 400 people a day die in an accident. Right, 400 people go to bed every night in America and doing everything fine, and tomorrow they'll die in an accident. And tomorrow night, 400 people go to bed, and the next day they'll die in an accident, right? And of course, we're so jaded by information, everybody just washes it off like, okay, great, no problem, another number. And I say, you don't take that in, and I don't take that in, because we don't think that statistic is talking about you and me. And I said, but here's the bad news. You think that happens to other people, and I've talked to other people, and they don't think it happens to them either. So who are these 400 people? Yeah. So in a sense, nothing changed, but everything changed.
Yeah. I think it's awareness. I mean, we just accept what I call, the adult facts of life.
The adult facts of life.
Yeah. There's the teenage facts of life. That's one level of facts of life that you got to learn. And then there's the adult facts of life. You're going to die. Did you get that? Not yet. Not yet. Not yet. Through our 20s, through our 30s, through our 40s, through our 50s. Somewhere in my 60s, I started to notice that, if I felt something strange in the body or felt some peculiar in the head or something, I would think, I wonder what this is. I wonder if this is the beginning of the end. This bump that's showed up on my arm, is this the beginning of a cancer that's going to do?
I'm sure a lot of people are having those very experiences now.
Yeah.
But you weren't sick. There wasn't anything wrong with you.
No.
Your head didn't hurt.
No.
You didn't have regular headaches.
No.
So for you, this was completely random and out of the blue.
Totally.
And then did you have thoughts of why did this happen to me? Or because oftentimes I notice that even though people don't necessarily subscribe to being punished, oftentimes they feel they did something wrong or they are being punished when they get sick. Or any of that come up for you?
Well, I think the cultural overlay of our generation, I think, has a lot of that in it. Like, you're responsible for your health, and if you're sick, then you've done something wrong.
We're terrible around stuff like
Hello,
this.
come on.
If we see a tree sick, we never say that tree did something wrong and made itself sick. But we are horribly intense on each other and ourselves. So did you go through some of that?
I saw those thoughts appear in the mind, but I didn't engage them, or I didn't get entangled in them. I could see, this is an assumption. This is a belief. This is a trying to explain something which I cannot explain, really. And so I wasn't satisfied with any of the content of those thoughts. I didn't believe them, so to speak. I saw them, and I had to read, and I noticed that I would react to some of them, like, I'm responsible. I'm not able to speak clearly now because of all the times I've lied. Karma. My karma is catching up with me. Now the times that I've been dishonest or not told the truth, now it's payback time. And I'd say, come on, Steve. Maybe there's a little bit of karma, momentum in that direction, but there's so many other conditions impinging on this present moment. Mental health, environmental health, tiredness, food, everything. It's like genetics, epigenetics, all those things are at play all the time. And to think, something in here, some me piece in here is making this happen is not believable. Just not. And so I think that my understanding of how thoughts arise in the mind and how they are adventitious and they're you can either agree with them or not.
And they're happy to have their way with you.
Oh yeah, if you don't pay attention to them, they will jerk you around. Yeah, definitely.
So I've heard a lot of acceptance and certainly a level of equanimity. But somewhere along the line of that acceptance and equanimity, you chose to step into the radiation and chemotherapy. Maybe you could explore a little bit with us or explain to us the steps that got you to that point of this is happening and I want to make this choice.
Yeah. So I was in the emergency room here, got out, had the appointments with the doctor, the surgeon, and it was explained to me, and the statistics show that without any treatment of this particular condition, I could expect to live about 4 months. So when the offer of radiation for 6 weeks and chemo for 6 weeks has the statistical adjustment to the possibility of a year and a half, that seemed like a good choice. I can bear with whatever the symptoms of the disease And whatever the side effects of the treatment are, I know in my own mind that I can handle the physical discomfort, pain, whatever, as well as the mind, because I know I can keep an eye on my mind. So I didn't see anything to fear about the experience of radiation and chemo or the surgery. So I didn't have any fear of physical discomfort or mental impairment. I think I was a little naive of just how impaired the mind could be and still be aware. But nevertheless,
what does that mean?
I'm going to go on to that a little bit more. But just to say that when the option of this kind of treatment, and it's the accepted protocol treatment for this kind of rare glioma tumor, it's accepted by the medical establishment, I didn't see any reason not to do it.
So you expressed a preference?
Yeah, that was my choice.
The preference to live longer.
Yeah, and let me just step back. What I understood before this all happened was just baloney. I didn't know anything about death, dying, cancer. I didn't know anything about anything.
Come on, the Buddhists are supposed to know about these things.
I mean, I practice reflecting on my death for a lot, but it just doesn't get as close as the diagnosis. So when I realized that I didn't know what I was experiencing or how to think about it, then that's when Brian and Kamala and other doctor friends of mine just started doing the massive research on what is going on here and how can we treat. Then it became, with more knowledge, I felt like I'd make a more wise decision. If I didn't know anything, I'm just going on, belief and cultural superstition. And with more knowledge, then we could collectively would say, well, this is an option, and this option, and if we do this, we got this, and so it became a team decision-making process where I had to open to the possibility of things that I never thought about in my life, but research was revealing, and I think that collectively we're making the most effective decisions for most effective treatment, both holistically and alternatively, and all the paradigms of treatment that we can document as being effective in treating this kind of condition.
And we're talking about the fine line, if there is a line, of acceptance versus action.
Yeah, I think for me, the exception part, or accepting part, is accepting the knowledge that others present to me. Because, they present something to me and I immediately have a reaction of like, I don't want to believe that. You're going to die in 4 months. I don't want to believe that. But wait a minute. If you don't do anything, you can't expect to live more than 4 months. Okay, I got to take that in.
Why? How did that change it from a minute ago where you weren't going to believe that?
Yeah, I mean, because I recognized that I was resisting. I had a wall of aversion towards feeling that feeling of I could die in 4 months. Oh, okay. So I had to open to the possibility. That means I had to accept that this could be a reality. That changes everything. As soon as you stop resisting and you accept that this is the way it's going to be, it may not be that way, but you'll be there to find out. So that was really how I approached everything that came, because then there's those who say, yeah, but if you do this treatment, you're going to go 5 years. Or I know somebody who tried this treatment and they're living after 15 years. So then you get this idea, oh, that's what I want to do. And I found that believing that thought or holding on to that possibility to the exclusion of the 4 month thing, one was aversion and one was desire. Both of them are entangling in some construct in the mind rather than living life in the present moment.
But still, again, coming back to this action and acceptance, oftentimes people have the misunderstanding that acceptance means you don't do anything. So even in the acceptance of what is, in my view, that actually becomes a ground to stand on to then make good choices. So how is that going now?
The accepting is the work. Being open to everything that comes my way, watching my reactions to it, and accepting everything. Both the pleasant, the unpleasant, those that are scary, those that are unscary, those that are hopeful, those that are... And I arrived, pretty soon into this process, I arrived at this understanding that there's nothing to hope for and there's nothing to dread. And I think we spoke about that because I see people in similar situations on this swing between hope and fear. Mm-hmm. And taking their caregivers on that ride, which can be exhausting for both the person and their caregivers. And so what I hear you saying is there's something that's stronger or deeper than that swing for you. I know that the mind has terrain that I haven't seen. That there are fears, there are hopes, there are desires, there are aspirations that I haven't realized, and I want to see them. I want to see what might be holding me back from opening to the fullness of this is the moment, whatever this moment is. And if it's some fear of it might hurt, or somebody might be embarrassed by me doing this, or I might feel, in my normal mind I might feel ashamed to do this, but this is what's going on. I want to be aware of that. I don't want to act it out, but I want to accept the fact that this is some part of the terrain of the mind. And if it's here in my experience, it's going to be in your experience too.
So if death is more real to you today than it was 6 months ago, how are things different for you?
Once I got the diagnosis and really took it in, and then come to this balance of more of a balance of understanding there's nothing to hope for and there's nothing to dread. Nature, the laws of nature are going to continue to unfold in this body and mind. I'd like to understand as much as I can about it. So that's how it affects. But it affects that...
How's your day-to-day thing? How's your relationship with the people around you? Different?
Yeah,
same?
very.
Very what?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm very weak. Don't have much strength or energy. I can get up and get around by myself, but I can't do much, which is not my usual lifestyle for the last 69 years. So I've been very energetic and active. So
does that cause suffering?
No, actually, I'm being allowed to just be as I am, rest as much as I need to, and I have just great team of supporters. Kamala and a nurse assistant and a couple of doctors that are available for consultation at any time.
So has anything changed?
My energy level has changed. What I spend my time doing has changed, meaning that and it's not because I choose to change it. It's like my mind is no longer energized or interested in much of what I formerly, what is morally occupied my mind. I can read the headlines, but nothing catches my mind. Nothing entangles my mind. And I've been politically active just in my own mind of just my approval and disapproval of things, and strong supporters of some candidates. And now when I see it, everything seems far away from me. The news and all the strutting about the world stage of popularity or politics or money or the stuff of news is far away. I can't moving further away from you. Yeah, it doesn't involve me somehow, and even entertainment outside of my own orbit of people, not interest. Nothing interests me. I don't have that kind of, as I mentioned to someone earlier, I don't have any bucket list to fulfill before I pass on, and not having any overwhelming demands on my time and energy, and it's not like I have to do anything before I die.
Did you have any thoughts about am I ready to die, and what would I need to do to be ready?
The question for me was like, okay, if I'm going to die, what is to be done here? What's the best use of my time?
That was Stephen Armstrong, a longtime Buddhist teacher in the Vipassana tradition. And again, that was recorded in 2018 when he was diagnosed with a brain tumor where he was expected to live about 4 months. And this is 3 years later, and he's active and living on his land here on Maui, and has resumed some of his teaching schedule. What a great interview, very raw and honest, and I really appreciated Stephen's forthcoming and honesty. So we've come to the end of the show. This is Death Tracks. I'm Bodie B. This is KAKU 88.5 FM, the voice of Maui.